We will now see the 6 Vedangas in a little detail. We simply understood that there are 6 Vedangas and each one of them has a specific purpose. So we'll start with Śikṣā. The word Śikṣā means to acquire knowledge. In this context, essentially, what it means is the science of pronunciation. You have to acquire the knowledge of how do you pronounce properly. Śikṣā Shastra is a very systematic approach to the art and practice of phonetics. So what we are talking about is phonetics, because pronunciation is what? It is about phonetics. And this is where the charm of this whole Vedanga is, because as preserving the Vedic text from any form of corruption is the most important thing, Śikṣā directs our attention to all the details of the process involved in pronunciation. In fact, this is precisely the reason, I think, why we feel that UNESCO has felt that a certain practice which has travelled for thousands of years without any corruption is a heritage, although it is in the sound form and you have to preserve it. So that preservation of the sound form without corruption is because there is a science of pronunciation, which is what this is, Śikṣā is all about. So basically it's all about the nada, the sound. And the ancestors have actually analyzed it in great detail, and they have somehow come to this conclusion that the sound is generated by the confluence of air and space in the vocal cord. And it can be at different places, we will see it, but finally it takes the form of a varna. Varna is the smallest component of an element. A is a varna, E is a varna, K, Ik, K, Ch, all these are varnas actually. So the sounds, the smallest form of sound called a varna comes on some strange combination of the space and the air. This is what our ancestors have found, and somehow they have analyzed and found that these different sounds come because of the contact made between various parts of the tongue and the places of articulation. This is the interesting part of this science of pronunciation which our ancestors have developed. So we will pictorially understand it, because explaining it orally may be difficult. So what we will do is we will take a picture and then see what is being told and how the varnas have come. Okay, what you see here is the skull portion. This is the skull portion actually, and the oral cavity. This entire thing is the oral cavity, right? And all these are the pharynx, the esophagus, larynx, everything are indicate, tongue, everything is in the jaw, tongue, all are indicated here, lips, right, and the palates, all those are indicated here. Then the nose is there, therefore the nasal cavity and so on. Now look at how they have thought about. In fact, this is how it is defined. There is a group called Nasika. Nasika means you have to use your nose, otherwise you may not be able to, in combination, otherwise you may not be able to, for example you say in, all these there is a certain nasal part also involved, that's why it's called Nasika. Then you have Murda. In Murda means upper palate. If you say ta, da, da, na, ra, sha, r, if you say all that, the tongue will go towards the upper palate. That's why they are called Murda. That's how they have defined it. Then you have what is called Oshtav. Oshtav means, lips. The two lips are called Oshtav. Pair of lips is called Oshtav. So if you have to say U, Pa, Pa, Bha, Bha, Ma, in all these you notice that unless you move your two lips, this sound will not come. That's why it's called Oshtav. Then there are some of them in which the tongue will go and hit with the teeth. That's why it's called Dantaha. Danta means teeth, right? So, R, Tha, Dha, Dha, Na, La, Sa. If you look at all of them, somewhere you need the jaw. The tongue will go and hit at the jaw, and then in that combination only that sound will come. Then there are some of them which are called Thalu, which is E, Cha, Jha, Jha, Nya, Ya, Sha. All these, the palate is involved. And then the last category called Kanta. Kanta is throat. neck or throat, whatever you may call it. So it is this part of our body which is involved to sort of regulate the air flowing through it, to generate sound like k, k, g, g, ng, ha, a. All these come, you keep trying it, you will find. If you say a, somewhere the sound will come from the throat. If you say ka, the sound actually comes from the throat. So that is why it is called kanta. So this is a very interesting and a very keen observation our ancestors have perhaps done, and they have been able to come to a conclusion that you need to use different parts of your body in the nasal cavity and the oral cavity to generate these sounds. So this is all behind Śikṣā, and this is what has ensured that even after thousands of years the mantras are not pronounced any differently, and we have not lost anything, they are in their original form. This is about Śikṣā. Then we will go to Vyākaraṇa. Vyākaraṇa is grammar, and actually the tradition of Vyākaraṇa dates to the Vedic period, which means must be some 10,000, 8,000, 9,000 years and so on. However, the credit goes to Panini, who lived in 600 BCE, which is about 2,700 years before, for presenting a structured work of Sanskrit Vyākaraṇa, and Panini created what is called Ashtadhyayi, which became so popular because of its brevity. That's why it's very popular. And basically Vyākaraṇa means to divide, separate or analyze. So it's a nice methodology by which a word can be broken into pieces, components, and analyzed and understood. So by reverse logic, with a few components you can build words. That is how Sanskrit language is actually. It is actually a constructive kind of a language. Sanskrit grammar is very unique because it devises unambiguous and rule-based methods to construct a word. As I told you, you can actually put things together and create a word. One can generate new words. One can reverse engineer by breaking a word into certain components and then analyze it. That is also possible. These are all part of Vyākaraṇa, and Vyākaraṇa has several features that parallel what has been applied in modern day data processing. All those are methods for creating lists based on processing logic, use of algorithmic approach to process the language, application of recursive logic to process data, etc. They are like these. There are many interesting things are there. I am not getting into detail into Vyākaraṇa simply because there is another chapter in which we will see it in great detail. All these issues that I spoke about, we will actually see it. That's why I just want to say here merely that Vyākaraṇa is a Vedanga. It brings the syntax and the grammatical dimension to the language, which we will see separately in another video in some detail.